So every law student at some point comes across a fork in the road where they need to choose between a career in litigation or in corporate law and what is right for them. And honestly speaking, this is the most common and most misunderstood decisions that one can make as a law student. And that is exactly the topic of this two-part series where I'm going to be walking you through a framework that's going to help you decide on which career path is right for you. So in this two-part series, in the first part, in this video, I'm going to be talking about what the potential each of these career paths have. And when I say potential, I mean in terms of earning potential as well as what impact that each of these roles have in the ecosystem. And in the next part of this series, I'm going to be talking about what the day-to-day looks like for each of these career paths and what are the skills that will matter for you to choose either of the career paths, and that will help you choose better about what is right for you. As part of these series, I'm going to be including a set of questions in each section, which are self-introspection questions that you need to ask yourself and see where you are at on those questions. This is a way for you to get to an answer at the end of this series on what is a path that will suit you better. So first, before we get into the framework on how to make this decision, let's address why this decision seems so difficult and so impossible to make. Because it's not just you guys, right? I think each batch of law students go through this, even we did, and it can get daunting. The reason why that this seems to be like an impossible decision to make is that when we are making it, we are under the impression that whatever we choose today is going to be irreversible, that we are going to be stuck with our choices that we make today for the rest of our lives. So let's first dispel with that notion. That is not the case at all. It's not an irreversible decision. In fact, I would say that safely you have at least 2 to 3 years after you pass out of law school to kind of reassess and see if what you've chosen really resonates with you or if the alternative looks better for you, and you can make that course correction. In fact, I know a lot of people, there are people that are working in my team that started off in litigation and they've moved over to corporate. I know when I was in Indus, I know people from my team who had, say 1 to 2 years experience in corporate law, and then they decided to make the switch to litigation. And all of them are doing perfectly fine. So first, let's take that pressure off that what we decide today is going to be binding for you for the next 30 to 40 years, which is not the case. But having said that, I would still recommend that you don't go into a decision on this blindly and you still make an informed choice, because what is going to happen is that the 2 to 3 years that you take to decide after your job could be discounted when you make that switch, right? In the long run, it is not going to have an impact. Like if you look at your career spans of 30 to 40 years, it is not going to have a major impact, but it is always better to, get started and be ahead of the curve. And that is exactly the intention of this two-part series, to help you to think through this. So you're making an informed choice, but let's not make that choice with the assumption that what we choose today is going to be binding on us forever, which is not the case. Okay. So coming to the framework, the first aspect of the framework that I'm going to be addressing is the potential that each path has, which will include not only the earning potential, but also what impact that the role has in the ecosystem and what job satisfaction will look like for each of these career paths. And the good news is that each of these career paths independently, they can be very fulfilling. You can have very successful careers. They can be rewarding in multiple ways. So whatever you choose is in itself going to be a good option, but what you need to see is what resonates with you more. Each of it is rewarding in its own way. So what are the rewards that resonate more with you for the kind of person that you are? Okay, so on the first leg of this section, which is on the earning potential, I'm going to divide this section into two frameworks to first examine what the salaries look like when you're right out of law school for each of these options, and two, what your earning potential looks like 15 to 20 years down the line. Because it is not necessary that what pays you well in this first stage of when you're right out of law school is necessarily going to be the one that pays you the most, say 15 to 20 years down the line. And hence it is necessary for you to have this two-step framework of looking at what the salaries are like, not only when you get out of law school, but you also need to see what your earning potential is when you have matured in your profession and you've crossed that 15-year mark. If you've chosen corporate law, again, you have two options here. You can either be working in a corporate law team in a law firm, or you can be working in an in-house role, right? First, let's see what it looks like in a law firm. So if you've chosen to do corporate law and you're working in a law firm, this I would say would be the most lucrative opportunity right out of law school. There are plenty of opportunities, not only in tier 1 firms, but even in tier 2, tier 3 and in boutique firms where you have the ability to learn the right skills, you have the ability to understand the practice, and you can move up the ladder and get to a tier 1 say within like 3 to 4 years. So in terms of earning potential, I would say that for freshers, this is the opportunity that is going to pay you the most. You will see the salaries in the market for this is going to be higher than any other option that freshers have. On the other hand, if you choose in-house roles, right out of law school, your salaries are going to be decent. It's not going to be as great as what a law firm will pay you, and even the increment year on year will be comparatively lesser. Like you will see that law firms increments are much more. They're in the range of say 15% to 20% year on year, but that's not going to be the case in-house, at least for the first 4 to 5 years. But once you cross that 5-year mark, then you will see exponential gains because you've learned the skills, and there's also a constant demand in the market for someone who has that experience range of say 4 to 6 years, and you will see that the salaries are going to increase at that mark, and it's just going to be an upward trend from there for an in-house role as well. On the other hand, if you pursue litigation, the way you look at the value that you're getting out of your job in litigation needs to be altered a bit, right? So when you're looking at corporate law, we're just looking at the earning potential and what the salaries are. But in the litigation market, it is a bit different, right? Litigation, your first few years of practice where you're learning on the job is almost like a training period. And the value that you get out of your job in terms of the learning, who are the seniors that you're learning from, how much are you able to learn year on year, is going to be marked at a premium value rather than the salaries that they are able to afford for you. The reason for this is that once you've crossed that 8 to 10 year mark in litigation, you're capable of taking on clients by yourself, right? If you picked up the right skills and you've done business development, this is the time frame within which that you will see people start doing that, and there's a lot of potential for you to build your own clients. Hence, litigation starts off with a minimal salary comparatively to corporate law, but if you build the right skills and you have the ability to get your own clients, your earning potential will exponentially increase once you cross that 8 to 10 year mark. So hence, when you're comparing salaries between litigation and corporate law, it's also important to take this aspect into consideration, the way the litigation market works. So now that you've seen that right out of law school, if you compare the hierarchy, you have jobs at corporate law firms that are paying the highest, followed by in-house role, followed by litigation. But you will see the difference in earning potential for both for in-house once you cross that 5 to 6 year mark, and for litigation once you cross that 8 to 10 year mark. Now let's look at what it looks like 15 to 20 years down the line, right? This is the time, irrespective of the practice that you're in, you're able to reap the maximum benefits of being in the profession, whether it is litigation or in corporate law. But in litigation, if you've set up your practice, if you've done the client development and built the skills and found your niche practice area, the sky is really the limit in terms of what you earn. Now let's examine the 15 to 20 year time frame. This is going to be a period, irrespective of the option that you've chosen, litigation or corporate law. This is going to be the time frame where you will see the maximum benefit of the earning potential in this profession, right? Within this time frame, litigators who have been able to build their own practice, build their own clients, and they're at top of their game, the earning potential for them is going to be right on top. And then you will see law firm partners followed by in-house professionals. So the questions that you need to ask yourself for this section after you understand what the framework is for salaries in these different options are, one, are you someone who wants a strong and steady income early on, or are you willing to trade that off for the possibility for higher earnings later on? And two, are you someone that prefers like a structured visibility on what your salary will look like 10 years down the line, 15 years down the line, or are you okay with that uncertainty, knowing that if you develop your skills well, you have a great earning potential, but you don't exactly know what that looks like today? Okay, moving on to the next section of understanding the career potential for each of these options is understanding the impact that your work has. While monetary considerations is a very important part, and it can seem like everything when you're at law school for your first job, but once you're in the ecosystem and you've spent a couple of years, you will start realizing that monetary potential isn't everything to keep you satisfied, and you will realize that job satisfaction also plays a significant role in ensuring that you are happy in the career that you have chosen. So in corporate law, you will see that much of your role, the objective of your role, whether it is in a law firm or in-house, is to help businesses make better decisions that will, one, not get them into trouble, and two, protect commercial interests of the business, right? So that is essentially the core function of your job, is to prioritize the commercial intention of the business and the commercial interests of the business. And that will always trump any legal perfection that you can bring to the table, right? For example, let's say that you're in a law firm and you're doing a diligence for your client that is looking to invest in a company. As a lawyer, you have to be thorough in kind of identifying everything that you can find in your diligence exercise, right? As part of this, you would have identified even much smaller things like certain statutory registers were not maintained, which is required under the Companies Act, and that will go into the report. But when the business teams look at it, when they're making a decision on how to act on your findings, they might tend to ignore these smaller things completely because it's not having an impact on the commercial commercial interests that they're prioritizing at the moment. And you should be completely fine with that, with the understanding that the decision maker at the end is going to be someone from business. So in this practice, you will see that commercial interests and commercial impact is something that is always going to trump legal perfection. And a lot of the work and the impact that you provide in corporate law is behind the scenes, right? You are strategizing, you are providing the best advice that you can think of while keeping all these different considerations in mind, and you are presenting the best solutions that you have to your client. But the ultimate decision maker is going to be the client. But on the other hand, if you think of how litigation works, people go to a lawyer because they're already in a dispute and they want a solution, right? So the client is able to, in this case, just give direction on what the end result, what the desired effect they are looking for. And after that, it is largely the decision making of the litigating lawyer on how to strategize, how to argue for them, what paths to choose to get to that result. And in comparison, you will see that they have more control. They are in the driver's seat in their profession. And in litigation, you will also see that it is possible to make a connection between the work that you did and the final outcome that it has, right? You've argued for a case and you can see what the end result of that matter is, even if it is, say, years down the line. But there is a direct correlation between the effort that you've put and the outcome that you can see from your work. So you will see that neither of them are more important in the ecosystem. It's just how their role has a different impact in the ecosystem. So for this section, the questions that you need to ask yourself is that, do you want to be someone who's part of strategizing and shaping business decisions and protecting commercial interests, even if that means working in the background? Or are you someone who wants to be in the front lines and see this direct, effort to impact a result that I was talking about? And when you look back at your work day, do you need to know that the work that you did was directly impacting someone's life? So write down the answers to all these questions that I put forth in this video, and together with the questions that are going to follow in the next video, you will be able to see what the trade-offs are and hopefully make a more informed decision. And if you found this video helpful, please share this with your batchmates who might also be struggling to make this decision. And do drop your answers to the questions that I've asked in the comments. I would love to hear why you're thinking the way you're thinking, and it might also help someone that's making a similar decision to think better. Don't forget to share this with your friends, hit the like button and subscribe, and I'll see you next week for part 2 of this series.